This week on Body Count, we continue our exploration of Genghis Khan. Hello and welcome to Body Count, the podcast where we believe history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I'm your host, Jessica Manor, and I am joined today by...
Frank Garcia. I am back again for this part 4. I'm excited to be back.
Oh, and I'm excited to have you back because we have so much more fun to get to today. Genghis Khan is finally going to become Genghis Khan. Now, we're far enough into this show that I'm done with all explanations and disclaimers officially. We are kicked back on our various couches, about to break down some seriously disturbing history. Only rule we choose when we choose a subject to discuss, someone or a lot of someones, as is usually the case, die. If you're listening to this episode, go ahead, back and on up for us. Start with part 1 of Genghis Khan, because this is a multi-part, really in-depth exploration of the life and times of Genghis Khan. And Frank Garcia and I have logged a lot of hours talking about Genghis Khan. So today, Temujin Khan finally becomes Genghis or Genghis Khan and unites a nation, builds a state, and kicks some serious ass, yada yada. And we're logging some serious hours on this. We're aware of that, guys. But if you're going to cover maybe history's heaviest hitter, you come correct. Then again, the secret history, could all be complete bullshit. We are trying to fuss out what we have from secondary sources written post-12th century. It's what we have. So speaking of, again, our source is Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World by Jack Weatherford. We're very much scratching the surface. We didn't go to Mongolia and fuss this all out ourselves, so we encourage you to go out. We encourage you to grab our source and the favorite source that we decided to go with. So let's get to it. Frank, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready as we can be. But I would like to give a shout out to some of your Twitter people, because I recently didn't start using Twitter till like 3 or 4 months ago. And I've had a lot of new followers, people commenting back on stuff that I recommend to them. So I just want to thank you and thank your Twitter people for some of the love out there.
Oh, dude, and they are fantastic. Like all of our Twitter people, they are absolutely 110% like there for all of it. So again, I agree. We cannot thank you guys enough, and the support for this show thus far has been pretty overwhelming. So we're really excited. It's exciting stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so when we last left off, we'd established how Temujin was creating the Mongol nation. We'd also established how he intended to kind of crack that nut, but Jamaka was standing square in Temujin's way. Jamaka and his band of white-boned Mongolian aristocratic horse herders who were growing increasingly threatened by Temujin and his growing band of basically black-boned shepherd upstarts. Temujin had declared himself Khan of the Mongols, and so Jamaka said, "What's good for the goose is good for the gander," and declared he was the Khan of all Mongols. But he picked the wrong name to call himself, the Gurkhan, which happens to be what Ong Khan's uncle was called. The one who he offed to become leader of the Kiryat himself. Jamaka wasn't just challenging Temujin. He was now challenging his sponsor, Ong Khan of the Kiryat. So, Ong Khan, therefore, mounts up, grabs Temujin, and came after those unruly Mongols under Jamaka. Together with their numbers and all the shaman that had shown for Temujin and Ong Khan, Jamaka and his followers just pretty much split and ran. So Ong Khan decides that he's going to pursue Jamaka, but he sent Temujin after the Taichud. Do you remember the Taichud? Yeah, the people that left his family for dead, the people that had taken him captive, and the people that had basically tried to kill him on multiple occasions. So, we all remember that. Yeah, this is like public enemy number one that he kept being reminded was his enemy when he was trying to make himself leader of his own band. Now, they had fucked up for the last time, and Temujin gave the Taichid the same treatment he had given all the other bands of Mongols he had absorbed thus far, but not before he crushed and captured their army. All of it. So then, public trials for all the leaders, summary executions, but he absorbed into his tribe, despite what they had done, to him, all of the non-aristocratic members. Temujin also came for the first time face to face with the poor family that had helped him when he was a Taichid captive. And let's just say those people never again wanted for anything for sure. Which I think is kind of a testament again to who he actually was, that he immediately sought out these people and was like just heaping all the best that he could possibly give them on their head. I think that's pretty cool. Now, back to Angkon. Jamaka, unfortunately, easily escaped Angkon and the Kiryat. Jamaka would begin regrouping in the same way that Temujin had after their first essential dust-up. And there were plenty of aristocrats still flocking to Jamaka's banner, and Temujin still had not put together the correct numbers for a sound defeat. Therefore, Temujin had some years to work building a nation in relative peace, which again, I would say for the first time in this guy's life, this is kind of the closest he comes to anything to relative peace.
Yeah, there's a lot of reference back. I mean, if we think back to those first couple of parts, I mean, always on the move, never settled anywhere, just living that rough life that some of these people in this Taichud clan that he can kind of relate to. So I think in a sense, it's kind of cool that he is following through with his mindset that he had always had from the very beginning. Fair trials. Did you do this? Did you do that? Saving some of those people that were just there along for the ride because that clan was keeping them safe. Just sticking true to his morals,
I 100% agree with that. And I think, that kind of goes against, and I think what we're trying to kind of go through and do with this is we always imagine that bloodthirsty, just like conquer, which don't get me wrong, as we get a little later and we start conquering nations, he was ruthless, but he always gave everybody a really fair shot. I thought that was pretty cool. I think that's pretty interesting. So, it's officially 1202, and Angkon is getting old. He's tired, bones are creaking. Angkon figures it's time to have a go at the Totters again. He's just old as shit now, so he's going to stay closer to home and have a go at the Merkid, with whom he still has some serious beef, and they haven't been eliminated yet. But that's just fine as far as Temujin Khan is concerned, because he made some mad Mongol money last time, and so he paid the Tatars another visit. But this go round, he was going to institute some more radical changes, a little more of his future nation building, and it was going to pay off in a really big way. Remember when we talked about how Temujin was done with all that raiding and reorganizing business? He was about to take that show on the road outside of the Mongol nations, and it was the Tatars' turn. Now, his new tactics would lose him some of the hangers-on aristocrats who did end up deserting to Jamaka, but he was about to make some big gains. Like, he should have been Genghis Khan after this because of all the gains. Temujin was about to cement the loyalty of the masses that he had gained and cared for. This attack against the Tatars would leave them no time to flee. Remember, raiders were normally, to kind of scatter the group and take their shit. But this time, Temujin Khan ordered that there would be no looting until after the Tatars had been defeated. They would then take all of the goods in an organized fashion. Everything they took would be meticulously accounted for and redistributed according to need and merit. And again, I think that is very novel and very interesting that he was interested in making sure that everyone was taken care of. It wasn't just a warrior's glory, which is something that we see in modern societies and what actually builds a society. So I think that is really neat, especially this next part. Furthermore, he insisted that the widows and the orphans of warriors slain in battle on behalf of the tribe be allocated soldier shares of goods acquired. Ultimately, this gave his warriors and the poorest among his tribes some added motivation to go at it 100% because they knew even if they kicked the bucket, Temujin Khan would make damn sure their families were always taken care of. He would take care of his people, which that was so novel, and it's, they didn't have contact with other civilizations that already had this kind of system in place. So I thought that was really interesting that was his first priority. He could have done a million different things first, but he chose to do this.
Yeah, it's almost like he saw war between other people as like your person laid down the line for you and your family. They lost, but at the same time, we're going to reward you for their service in battle. It's like he took service in battle quite serious,
Yeah, it wasn't just, oh, he's dead. I mean, tough luck. No, it was, you sacrificed for me and for the nation. I'm going to make sure that everything you have is taken care of. Which, again, doesn't sound novel to us, but it was incredibly novel in the 1200s on the steppe. So, now back to that Tatar raid. For the first time among the Mongols, the Tatars, and the Kirid, etc., no one went for the loot. Therefore, Temujin Khan was able to capture the entire army and all the population as well. So basically, one fell swoop, he takes in the entire Tatar nation, essentially. And they were able to capture all the goods and all the animals of the Tatar nation, again, within that one fell swoop. Now, knowing that everyone outside the kinship network, more or less the nation network, were traditional enemies and had to be adopted into the tribe, Temujin Khan had his work cut out for him. He did his traditional public trial, aristocratic leader execution business, but the Tatars were an entire nation of thousands, not clans of 100s. Temujin was nation building and for the first time nation conquering. This is when it officially begins. He gathered all of his followers to discuss what they should do. Remember, this is Mongolia in 1202. In a way, this is pretty humane, but they decided to kill all Tatar males taller than the linchpin holding the wheels of a cart, which was a Mongol measure of adulthood. So these males were essentially young enough, once grown, not to remember life outside of the tribe of Temujin Khan. And like all the other absorbed tribes, Temujin ordered the remaining Tatars to be taken into the tribe as free members with every opportunity to share in future wealth. And not only did he take a new brother, remember the whole orphan adoption thing, but he heavily encouraged for the first time intermarriage among high-ranking members of his tribe. Up to this point, he had only been married to his maid Squeeze Borta, but Temujin took two more white-boned aristocratic wives of the Tatars to really seal the deal in the minds of both nations. Tatar and Mongol would henceforth become synonymous with each other throughout all of living history. So I think that is a really interesting approach too, because like we said, he could have just been really bloodthirsty, But instead, he saw an opportunity to increase those numbers because he never lost in the back of his head, keeping the eye on the prize, which was Jamaica.
Yeah, which he's just waiting to have his shot at it. It's these parts in between the battle between him and Jamaica, like it's fueling the fire for him. His army is growing. The amount of followers he has on with him are, he's got a steady round of supporters with him. I mean, it's not like he can just go to today's things where he tells people, hey, follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, make me popular. And then he gets a nice little check mark next to his name as a verified follower. But, it takes time. And I don't think people understand the amount of time and effort or just the knowledge that he is putting into this to make it work. And that's why it's leading up to being one of the longest campaigns, we've seen to date.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think it's absolutely fascinating because he could have let his pride get in the way. He could have, he could have just said, all right, I'm going to try it now. I'm going to try it now. He could have done things the way they were always done, but he had a vision even beyond Jamaica, which is interesting to me. And so he's getting some real life practice for the first time, not just conquering other Mongol clans with whom he has kinship ties even, and everything's the same. Now he's taken in a nation.
Holy cow, like all the stuff that's going into this in between, like in schools and stuff, they don't put this stuff in there. They see it as just like extra rummage in a book, but this stuff is important.
I agree. But intermarriage, all that stuff in his mind isn't going to be enough. So he does something also pretty novel and pretty interesting. He then reorganizes his army because it was going to take more than, again, being married and living together to make two nations one nation. Warriors were organized into squads of 10 who, for all intents and purposes, were now family. And these groups were made of a mix of all tribes, all nations, and all religions. They were to live together with their families, fight together, and they could never, ever leave the others behind as captives in battle. So basically, you had to die trying to get your critical bros back. The oldest dude led the group, but Temujin allowed the majority to choose another leader if they were all simpatico with it. 10 of these squads of 10 formed groups of 100, and they all voted a leader. And then 10 of the squads of 100 formed battalions of 1,000, and they selected a leader. And in turn, 10 groups of 1,000 formed a group of 10,000. But the leaders of the 10,000 were chosen by Temujin Khan, and he chose his most ride-or-die warriors to lead. Temujin allowed brothers, sons, first cousins to kind of stay together if it was practical, but by reorganizing all the tribes and all the nation of the Tatars randomly, he essentially erased all clan alliances. Because if you had basically the nutsack to try and desert, you were so fucked because the penalty was death. So in one fell swoop, and this is amazing to me, and it says a lot about he'd already been thinking this out. So lineage, aristocracy, all that clan bullshit that had been plaguing him since birth, basically, was completely gone in this new organization system. So using the army, all of his people were integrated into one new nation under the Temujin Khan. So now he had somewhere around an estimated 80,000 warriors. So what if you couldn't serve in the military, though? Don't worry. Temujin had a knack for personally finding the talents of each and every member of his tribe. So if the army's just 80,000, imagine what the whole tribe is at this point, and every single person was personally seen and assigned by him, which is insane to me. So public service is our answer. So if you couldn't serve in the army, you were given specific jobs in herding, gathering fuel for fires, cooking, making things, repairing weapons, singing and entertainment, tending the wounded. he was building more than just an army. He was building a functioning civilization. And this is what's even more amazing to me. All the tenets of civilization exist, but yet they are still nomadic. Unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it's almost like he gave people like they were felt worthy. Like I don't want people to like feel like this is like, oh, he's just giving them jobs to do something so they get off their lazy ass. No, he's making them feel like they are part of a family. They are part of this tribe. Like, we want you to be with us. We don't just want you to feel like you're just nobody, you know?
Exactly. And it wasn't tossing out maybe people that were weak, had disabilities. There was something that everybody could do to contribute and to feel part of this tribe. I agree 110%, which I know that we're talking about it as if this happens every day where we live now, but this is novel in what was a completely warrior dominated culture in the 1200s. He's building a civilization within a nomadic society. I mean, he just breaks all the rules of history and world history basically up until this point. And I think that is what is really, really cool about this guy, actually. Now, there was no aristocracy within the tribe, no bone system. No one was better than anyone else. Now, other people in history have adopted these tactics to unite divided groups and reorganize armies, albeit in more sedentary civilization. But here's the thing, there's no reason to believe that and no proof that Temujin would have ever heard of these tidbits of previous history. I mean, we're talking about history that you find in Athenian city-states. It's pretty fucking ingenious and a testament really to the kind of brain that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, it's not like there's, Capitol buildings, high-rise buildings, libraries right down the street from his little hut he's got set up, like in Mongolia. At this time was just grasslands, mountains, trees. Like, obviously it's probably a little bit more civilized today, but you couldn't just walk down to his library, give him his library card and be like, hey, I'd like to learn about Athenian city-state history today. That's not, I mean, obviously we heard from parts 1 and 2, that's not what happened, but like you said, the brain functionality in his head and how he just perceives things, how he sucks in knowledge like a sponge, is amazing.
It really is. I mean, like 100% genius, actually, this guy. He is, the more I learn, the more fascinated I am by just exactly who Genghis Khan, or at this particular moment, Temujin Khan is. So, not only that, but Temujin refrained from saying things like Mongol or Tatar or clan names. He called them, the people of the felt walls. In 1200s Mongolia, it's what they made their gurs or tents from. Now, remember, there were Mongol tribes, but also nations to the south. One of the three, which now had been conquered and belonged to Temujin and the Mongols, had been united. And that meant their land had become united as well. So now, not only had Temujin increased vastly the number of followers and increased vastly the size of his army, but now he had a shit ton of land under his control as well. And Khan, Temujin's ceremony dad, got really, really jelly. Now, Temujin now owned outright a kingdom that he had been used to plunder when he felt like it. Now, instead of one enemy, Temujin was about to have two. And Khan had never shied away from playing Temujin and Jamaka off of one another. Khan wartime, like, Temujin now had a following, a nation that could crush Jamaka, but it could rival Jamaka and Khan's numbers together, basically now. So it wasn't one or the other. Now Khan is going to unite together with Jamaka, basically. So it had been 20 years now since Jamaka and Temujin split, And Ankhan was old as dirt by this time. Furthermore, no one knew who Ankhan's clear successor would really be. His biological son had zero talent for leadership and no following of his own. Temujin Khan thought he would resolve the Temujin versus Jamaka fight by forcing the issue of who would assume leadership for Ankhan and his nation. Jamaka would straight up be finished if this happened, and the Mongols, Temujins, all the Mongol nation, unquestionably Temujins, if that happened. Therefore, Temujin proposed marriage between Ankhan's daughter and his eldest son. Ankhan had found Temujin pretty much as being useful over the years, but Temujin, as is our theme to our story, and it appears everyone in this story has to learn the hard fucking way, was nothing more than a common upstart to the Kiryat royal family. And Ankhan was a real dick when he refused the marriage, too. And then he kind of pussed out, and there was no question who was the biggest swinging military D on the steppe right now. And Ankhan began to kind of fear what Temujin might do based on how dickish he was when he refused that marriage. Therefore, he thought he would resort to some good old-fashioned trickery to rid himself of Temujin Khan. And that is something I am never going to get for the remainder of this story because it keeps happening. Why do people think he's joking? Like he has crawled literally out of the dirt to put himself in the position he currently is. He killed his own half-brother to do it. Like, this is not a guy that's going to mess around. So why people? And maybe it's a testament to how deep that aristocratic system and school of thought actually ran that never in a million years would upstart Temujin Khan, be able to challenge Jamaka and Ankhan together. It amazes me throughout this entire story.
Yep. Don't cross the double crosser, especially this one.
Exactly. So, Ankhan says, JK, let's hitch our kids, sets a day, invites Temujin to come with his family to celebrate their kids hooking up. But little did Temujin know that Ankhan had invited his old enemy Jamaka and his aristocratic assholes over to his place. Now, Temujin trusted Ankhan explicitly. He had no reason in the last 20 years not to trust Ankhan. Again, a testament to, I really believe, Temujin Khan trusted people until they gave him a reason not to, they gave him a reason not to trust him, or to trust them. Temujin Khan set off with his family and just a few of his warriors, leaving his entire nation behind them in their various locations, because again, he trusts Ankhan. But luckily, a day before they arrived, Temujin Khan was informed that upon their arrival, Ankhan and Jamaka were just planning to slaughter him and his entire family when they finally showed up. And for the last time in the life of Temujin Khan, far from his army, had only one choice: to flee. So Temujin Khan took his warriors and fled the opposite direction of his family, as Ankhan and Jamaka knew the jig was up and had already begun pursuit. For some time, Temujin and his warriors had to keep moving as they had just been isolated by the forces of Ankhan and Jamaka from all of their people, all of their army. And to me, it must have just been ashes in Temujin's mouth to have to live like he had lived, hand to mouth and on the run all those years ago. Like, think about that. That's what he'd been building this entire time, was some semblance of safety for himself so that he never had to do this again. So I can only imagine just like what that must have felt like for him to be right back, or to feel like you're right back where you started. Ugh.
This gives you some Red Wedding feels from Game of Thrones.
It gives me so many Red Wedding feels.
So, but like you saw in that, all good things have to come to an end. He reaped what he sowed. So,
yeah, because speaking of he's about to go Arya Stark all over their asses. Let me put it that way. Because if he didn't get it down as a boy, he sure as shit wasn't gonna let it stop him as a man. So Unkan and Jamaica soon halt their hunt and pursuit. For whatever reason, they were still living in the old world, a world where once you had scattered a leader and source, a leader, the source of their power was gone forever. After all, his followers were different nations, countless Mongol clans, completely different from one another, and the entire Tatar nation. And they were also different religions, including the Mongol religion, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists. In the minds of Angkon and Jamaica, there was no reason for anyone to continue following Temujin. But Temujin Khan had spent the last 20 years doing more than raiding and letting those at the top get rich. He had transcended kinship, ethnicity, and religion to create something like a modern civic citizenship to a state. Temujin's followers belonged to a nation, and a nation under which everyone had thrived, everyone belonged, and everyone could rise high as long as they were willing to work. And I just don't think that it was something that Angkon or Jamaica could completely wrap their head around.
Yeah, they're riding too high on this, power-hungry position that they want to be in, which ultimately is just hurting them. Like, if we think back, Temujin was just wanting to do the best that he could helping Jamaica. There was never anything about, hey, I'm going to overtake you and be better than you. It wasn't like that until Jamaica got in this little bitchy ass way that he wanted to act. Now these two are so power hungry. It's in the end, it's just going to end up fucking up the whole thing that they have worked so hard for to build. For what? You want to get one guy who ultimately, if you would have just been nice to, there could be 3 people to possibly expand this even more,
Exactly. I mean, loyalty seems to be the one thing in the world he cares most about. He would have been your best freaking friend, but they screw up and they screw up and they just keep doing it. And it was so far beyond them that they couldn't just let the old ways and systems go, that they couldn't wrap their head around what it was that he was doing within his own nation of people. So they just break off. They stop worrying about Temujin, which mistake, if there ever was one, because once Temujin was free and clear, he starts driving hard and fast, not for home, but straight at Angkon and Jamaica. Now that's some fucking confidence, because he spread the word to his nation to start organizing. They were coming for Jamaica's remaining followers and Angkon's entire nation. Furthermore, he began spreading word of his miraculous escape. Temujin had also learned the power of propaganda these last 20 years. I would like to think that Temujin Khan, even he couldn't estimate the pitter-patter response of his new nation of the Felt Walls, though, because all across the steppe, his followers had sat and waited, continued their work, held their ground, just as they were supposed to. And now his generals had their units of 10,000 ready and waiting, and had stood ready and waiting, despite what they may have heard, to kick some ass, because they immediately mobilize and join Temujin Khan in full fighting force by the time he made it back to the lands of the Kyriad. Which again, that to me, that shows the loyalty that he was able to create and the order he was able to create. Nobody stopped doing the work they were supposed to do. The army kept training. They stood ready, just sitting there waiting for, oh, he's going to get away. And when he does, we better be ready.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that everyone's on the same page. His generals respected him and his wishes, hey, I've got to go take care of this. But at the same time, I need y'all to do your part in case some shit stirs up, which his mindset and his rule to power is way different than Jamaica and Hong Kong, which is paying off. So
yeah, 110%. So now, as soon as he shows up, he finds his badass fighting force there, ready and waiting. But not only that, his mother and that bad bitch Borda had been doing some talking of their own, and some of their kin that had counted themselves in the Angkon and Jamaica camps deserted and joined the forces of Temujin Khan. Now, Temujin valued loyalty, yes, but he would take deserters as long as they had committed no acts of treachery or harm when they ditched in favor of his leadership. Now, Angkon and Jamaica had spent 20 years dealing with Temujin Khan, and it seems that they learned absolutely nothing about how this man thought and how he functioned. And it's a testament to the fact of just how deeply, again, that aristocratic privilege ran, because they just couldn't see their way to a world where a black-bone upstart could crush them. So much so that these guys were literally kicking back, having a multi-day drunken feast to celebrate their, quote, victory over Temujin Khan. Now, little did they know that Temujin Khan was racing non-stop toward them. No stops, no breaks. Followers moving ahead of the army with fresh mounts so that they never even had to stop. And furthermore, instead of choosing the easy route, he went through a remote and difficult pass in order to just drop down on the Cariad and take them completely by surprise. And they were swallowed by Temujin's forces. I mean, completely decimated. I can't explain how vicious it was. Just poof, gone. And Temujin wasn't super happy with everything that had went down. So imagine the carnage that he was ready to create when he got there, and boy did he. So he was pretty upset. So
I think this is when you can bring in that point of him being that ruthless savage. This is definitely one of those times where you can think of him being that ruthless savage that just went 100% balls to the walls and decimating this tribe. Like, sorry, I mean, I got fucked with. You're the one in my path. You're just going to have to deal with it with all your whole clan that's in the way. I mean, there's nothing I'm going to do about it. I've been screwed over, and you can say what you want, but see ya.
Yeah, exactly. Like when the man's being nice, nations are just conquered. So imagine when he's pissed what happens. That's the one thing he couldn't stand, like deal breaking and lack of loyalty. So Angkon and his son managed to flee only to die in the desert. Temujin countered this failure to capture them by simply dismissing it and beginning his work as usual. Trials, execution of the ruling class that was left, absorption into the tribe and the army, intermarriage, etc. of anybody that happened to be left. The last of the Mongols under Jamaica's control, which at this point were just basically the highest born of the Mongols, then fled to the Naiman. Now remember, we had 3 nations that were to the south of the Mongols. So now he has the Tatars. He's just knocked off the Cariad. Jamaica flees to the last of them, the Naiman. Now, the steppe, as we know, it was divided into all of this kind of stuff. And Temujin had now united a majority of the bands, the Tatars, the Cariads, under his spirit banner. And so now all that's left is the last place that Jamaica's hiding. He's coming for him. Now, the problem was the Naiman had far superior numbers, despite all that Temujin Khan had managed to gain. But Temujin never let that stop him, not from the very beginning, and he's certainly not going to let it stop him now. He began spreading negative propaganda far and wide against the Naiman, as well as inflating his numbers and tales of his own prowess as he marched toward them. So, 1204, Temujin Khan begins his campaign. But knowing his inferior numbers prevent him from an all-out battle approach, Temujin begins a series of hit-and-run attacks. and using a bunch of new attack formations amalgamated from older techniques and hunting patterns that had a kind of, he put his own spin on, which is also really interesting to me because it's like you said, he can't just go down to the local library and look this stuff up. He had really, really thought about this, and it was something they were not ready for.
Yeah, he's just taking little quick fires at them, trying to kind of get them off their toes a little bit, get them to where they are, uncomfortable fighting. Like, dang, we can't get them. Like, what are we supposed to do? And all their generals are like, well, what do we do now? And then that goes up the chain, up the chain, up the chain, and then just creates a backfall of, well, we don't know how to stop this. And then just wait, you'll see what comes along when Temujin Khan gets his chance to finally break that barrier.
Oh, yes. So slowly but surely, using new tactics and attack patterns, they wore down, drove back, and just outright defeated the Naimon and Taiyang Khan, their leader. But it was brutal because Temujin was still on a tear and he wanted Jamaica. Ugh. But once again, Jamaica and a ragtag bunch of highborn generals were able to escape. But he had nowhere to go as any remaining Mongol bands were immediately swallowed by the new nation of Temujin Khan. So even though he'd lost Jamaica, he's got some brutal killing. And if you thought he was rough on the Chariot, whew, they had it easy compared to what he did to the Naimon. And this is, again, I agree, this is where we start to see only the bloodthirsty parts of a lot of later history that remained, because he did earn some of that title. But what's interesting and more interesting to me now is he knows that Jamaica's got nowhere to go. So it's a waiting game for him. But what's even more amusing to me is the now 40-year-old aristocratic asshole Jamaica is living the way and forced to live the way Temujin had been forced to grow up living. So sweet, sweet payback, as being a white-boned aristocrat didn't matter for shit when you were having to eke out an existence as an outcast bandit subsisting on whatever food you could basically catch. The 20-year-old feud between these two was about to end, not with a bang, but a whimper. Which, to me, is interesting that instead of ever, and it's interesting to me about Jamaica, instead of ever just standing up, after that first initial rout, when he'd begun to get himself into trouble with the way that he reacted and the boiling of people alive and all that stuff, Jamaica was afraid after that and never ever faced Temujin directly. And Temujin was so intent on getting Jamaica, he conquered 3 gigantic nations far larger than all of the Mongol nation itself to get to this guy. That is a singleness of purpose. I wish that I had any of the focus, like even a teeny bit of the focus that Temujin Khan has. It's amazing to me.
It's like they had almost switched spots. One went from like rags to riches, and then the other one got what he deserved almost.
Oh, yes, because in 1205, a year after the Naimon were defeated, Jamaica was finally betrayed by the last of his uppity followers, who seized him and delivered him to Temujin. But remember, you could come to Temujin if you simply left and chose instead to follow him. You could not commit an act of treachery before desertion. Remember, he was very, very big about the loyalty thing. The white-boned aristocratic assholes who had turned on their leader Jamaica, instead of being rewarded, were summarily executed in front of the leader they had betrayed. Now, I'm going to kind of summarize what happened next the way the secret history says it does, because otherwise, we don't really have much insight into how this might have gone down. But again, could all be bullshit. Like, in my mind, there was no choice. It was either going to be Jamaica or it was going to be Temujin. Neither could live while the other survived in a kind of Harry Potter sense of the word, so remember, secret history was written after Temujin Khan's death, and it could be colored for propaganda purposes, and not to mention it had been translated from other languages, yada yada. So guys, just keep that in mind for this next part of the story. Now, supposedly, according to the secret history, Temujin, knowing Jamaica could no longer pose a threat to him, was like, look, bro, can we just be friends again? Like, didn't you miss me? Didn't you feel bad about the shit you've been pulling for 20 years? So then Jamaica supposedly gets all broken up about how much he's missed Temujin and goes on for a bit about how cool they used to be together. He then blames their separation on some unnamed person. The secret history just doesn't give a name of the person who turned Jamaica against him, basically. Which, there's something interesting to that. It does seem that Jamaica's turnaround suddenly on Temujin was kind of unexpected. So I wonder, and we're never going to know, what may be back channeling and who was doing what. If I have my guess, I'm going to say it was probably on Khan.
Definitely agree. I could see him, just how many games he played with Temujin. Broken promises, broken loyalty. That's who I'd put my guess on, but there's too many things that could falsify that.
There are, but if I had my guess, he really enjoyed playing those two off of each other, so that wouldn't shock me. Now, Jamaica supposedly confesses, repents forever, goes on about how amazed Temujin has become, in some very flowery language, let's just say, for 1200s Mongolia, which is why there are some questions about its accuracy. Then Jamaica basically says something like, the world is yours for the taking, buddy. What good am I to you? I would be nothing but a thorn in your side. They go back and forth. Jamaica talks some more about what led him to this current place and supposedly makes one request of Temujin Khan, that he be killed the aristocratic way, which meant no spilling of his blood. Remember, Mongolians were not fans of blood on the earth or exposed to the sun and sky, which were actually venerated by the Mongol religious system. He then supposedly offered to be the friend he wasn't in life to Temujin, basically saying, kill me, bury me in a high place where I can always look after Temujin and his descendants. Now, Temujin did just that. And this is, this is the aristocratic death Jamaica apparently requested and supposedly received. And it is metal as fuck, y'all. Like, they broke your back and basically just leave you to die out in the elements.
I'm getting some Mortal Kombat feels here with this.
Yeah, exactly. Right? That is exactly what I thought. It's just, oh my God, 110%. It's so horrific. And everything was so intense, I feel like, with these people. But then again, the steppe was a very tough place to live. I mean, though, God, that is just, it's metal as fuck. Like, break your back and leave you to die in the elements. But
it's kind of surprising that they didn't have some kind of way to, like, lethal injection or something like that. They just like, all right, we're going to break your back. See you, kid. Have a good one.
Right. Like, see ya. Have a good one. I don't care how venerated and how much people hated blood. I'd be just like, get it over with. No, thank you. But whatever. Again, why we have to kind of doubt maybe some of what the secret history is telling us here, because I don't know that anybody would choose that in particular. So with Jamaica and all the other Khans dead, all other tribes and nations absorbed, Temujin was literally the last man left standing over one unified nation, from the Gobi in the south to the Arctic tundra in the north, from the Manchurian forests in the east to the Altai Mountains in the west. Now, Temujin had collected an area the size of Western Europe, and he spent the entire next year, before he, did anything to declare himself leader, his first priority wanders around the entire year, getting all of his ducks in a row and fixing up the kingdom, making sure that everyone's taken care of, making sure everything's unified, putting everybody into positions, and that's amazing to me that he did that all himself. Like, it wasn't trusted to other people. He did it.
He's just doing what he promised to the people, making sure that there was loyalty, that there was trust built into his nation, making sure that people are being checked up on. And I'm sure he had people, with this vast spread out of people, he had certain people that he thought very highly of,
and trusted his life with. Absolutely.
Yes.
Like, definitely. But to me, like, it's a modern management lesson. Who wouldn't want to work for a guy like this? You know what I'm saying? What if all of our bosses were just like this? I bet productivity would skyrocket.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's so interesting, and because it's so novel for the time. Even in Europe, sovereigns, kings didn't behave this way. They could give, 2 tits less if all the peasants died, but not Temujin Khan. So it just really, it's at odds with me on what we imagine and what we think when we think of Genghis Khan, because this is a guy who does care 110%.
And I think it just takes us back to, from the very beginning, how loyal and how much this kid went through just to get where he is today. That plays a role in his success. It's a story that is not accurately told, that I think, and now to hear more and more of it, kind of piece it all together, it just makes sense that he wasn't ruthless. At times he was, yes, but I wouldn't say he was the entire time. Like, his mission was not to just kill people and destroy nations. It was to weed out the bad and fix the good, put everything together in one, how it should be, and how you see most civilizations today. Most. You don't see it everywhere, but I'll keep that very, very non-descriptive, because people can take that the wrong way.
Exactly. No, but I agree with that 110%. This is like the beginning of modern nation making. So he calls together finally after this year all the followers, and basically waits to have kingship conferred upon him. And he didn't skimp on the ceremony because, again, he'd long since learned the power of appearance, the power of propaganda. So Temujin swore the oath that he would serve at the people's pleasure and would bend only to the people's voice. And they conferred upon him the name Genghis Khan, Chin being the Mongolian word for strong, firm, unshakable, fearless, and it was also close to the Mongolian name for wolf, or the ancestor from which they claim descent, essentially. But we know him better in the West by the Persian spelling, and Temujin Khan became Genghis Khan, ruler of the new Mongol state. And next time we will be back with how he cemented that state. And once he had done so, started crushing the shit out of others to make one of the most kick-ass empires the world has ever known, and lived to be the exception to almost every single rule in history. And that wraps it up for this week. So, Frank, what are you thinking now that Jamaica's dead?
I'm a little bummed. I wish it would have gone out with a big hit. I mean, I knew that in advance, doing the research, that it was, kind of like a wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
I wanted a ruthless battle of swords and horseback riding with arrows. But it was like, hey man, I'm going to turn you in and we're going to break your back, which breaking your back is still pretty, gruesome. Like I can't explain the thought process behind that, but if I was Genghis Khan at the new name Genghis Khan, I would have just left him to feel 20 years of pain that I felt the same way.
I would have too, but again, it's such a testimony to what an interesting character he was that he did not do that. I've been rewatching all of Game of Thrones, getting ready for this new and last season. So I've been getting nothing but Dothraki feels a lot while I've been researching this. So in my head, I kind of wanted the same thing too. I wanted it to be like, oh damn, here they come.
I get a lot of the Game of Thrones feels, Braveheart a little bit, especially Gladiator too. You know, the guy had to, Russell Crowe, you know, the Spaniard, his forces were waiting for him back home, and they didn't even know that he was captured by the, you know, and taken as a slave. You know, it's kind of the same thing.
It really is interesting. And furthermore, like, I don't know, but what's great about this is it's 110%, you know, like it's just so true. And that is what makes it so awesome to me. So I guess we're going to wrap it up. Normally we would do a nice long counterculture and talk about things that bring us up and make us happy, you know, and take our minds off of backbreaking and people being left to die in the elements. But we're a little pressed for time here recently, so we're just going to kind of run through it. I have my usual plug for Care Rescue Texas on social media, carerescuetexas.com. Again, they do amazing work for rescues of all kinds, but they also do a lot of really important stuff for big cats. They're near and dear to my heart. And then I also want to plug my friends Dennis and Molly over at the American Dirtbags podcast. They're a ton of fun guys. If you like everything from wrestling to just random conversations about nothing, they are fantastic. So go and listen to them. Frank, what do you have for us?
You know, I don't really have a lot, and I think it's been boiling for me to ask if you've made it to a Genghis Grill yet.
Oh, I've made it to Genghis Grill. Genghis Grill.
And what
is fantastic. How did I live my whole life without not knowing about this place? Because everybody on Twitter has been hitting me up about, how have you not gone to this yet? Like, have you gone to this yet? But yes, we made it. It is fantastic. I am in love.
Yeah, it's definitely the one of the first things I brought up since I've joined the podcast with you guys. So I'm glad you finally made it there. And that's really it for me. I've kind of started to venture out from my normal podcast scene of, you know, stuff you should know and some CrossFit stuff. So if y'all got any suggestions, you know, you can hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. And so I've told all those before. So you're more than welcome to shoot me over some suggestions.
Oh, and 100% do, because he will listen. And so, like, keep in mind, those are the podcasts he likes. So if you think you've got something along those lines, do shoot your stuff over. Like, he's not like everybody else. Frank's actually going to listen. He'll actually give you feedback. So definitely hit him up. Speaking of all of our social media, we drop every Wednesday, as you guys know, anywhere that you could possibly listen to a podcast. We are on all platforms. We're at Body Count Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and Body Count Pod on Facebook. I'm Jessica B, as in boy, so Jessica B Manor on Twitter and Instagram. I'm largely a Twitter person, though. I will warn you. Gonna try to start doing better. Be on Instagram more, but I'm not making any promises. Frank, where do people find you?
I'm on Twitter at @the_Frank_Garcia, and then on Instagram at @the_Frankie_Garcia. So I'm also on Facebook, but you won't find a lot of stuff on there, so I wouldn't even bother going to look for it. You'll just find a bunch of lifting videos and family photos. So
yeah, we're gonna try to do better on other forms of social media, guys. We promise. We really promise. So we will see everybody back here next week for part 5 of Genghis Khan, when shit starts getting real, guys, for sure. So we're going to wrap it up. It was great talking to everybody this week, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.